I am going to go ahead and get started. If anybody has any questions, you can either throw it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. This is a very casual class today, but I think it's super important, and something we don't talk about often is, what are you including in your listing presentation? What's important? What's not important? So without further ado, what I wanted to start with, this is like pretty astonishing to me. So they're saying now that about 90% of sellers already know who they're going with before you even get the appointment, before you step foot in the door. And I think this is different than, the market is constantly changing. This is different than it was 5 years ago, and pre-COVID especially. You would possibly compete against a few other listing agents, and it was your pitch, your listing presentation is what they went off of. Now, because social media is such a staple in everyone's life, 90% of sellers know who they're going with before the listing presentation. Even more so, I would argue, before they're even reaching out to you. And there's so many people who will say, well, what about my sellers, or they're older, or I deal with an older generation. I don't care what ages of people you're dealing with. Even if they're not on social media, I promise you their kids are. And their kids want to make sure, just like when you're working with first-time home buyers and the dads are protective, I think when you're working with an older population, their kids are protective, and their kids are looking you up on social media. So what are they paying attention to? I pulled a couple agents at Living and also Emily at Elevate. I did not ask them to use a screenshot of their Instagrams. I hope that's okay. But what they're looking for, whether it's the prospective client, the child of a client, they don't want to go to your page and see that you haven't posted anything in a month, or even 2 weeks for that matter. Like, they want to see, it doesn't always have to be about real estate, but they want to see that you're active on social media. Because if you're not active on social media, which is like the #1 way to market right now, how are you going to market their house? And I would say, rule of thumb, make sure that you are posting. In my world, like, I love to have a story up at all times. So anytime you would click on my Facebook or Instagram, there's a story. Again, it doesn't have to be real estate related, but they just want to see your posting. So good rule of thumb is 1 post a day. And whether that's a post to your feed or your story, be sure you have something on there. The reason I used these as an example is, first, Katie Matteo. And actually, I would tell you, if you don't follow these agents, like I said, this is Instagram. If you don't follow these agents on Facebook or Instagram, I would encourage you to. I think all 3 of them are wonderful with social media. And what I love about Katie is Katie has created a market for herself where she lives. If you watch her reels, they're not necessarily 100% real estate related. They're what she loves about Hudson, what she loves about Northeast Ohio. So she's educating the market there. Emily, if you can see here, what I loved is you can see how frequently she's posting. Like, she didn't know I was going to be sharing this. And yesterday, it was the Wadsworth Blue Tip Parade, or 2 days ago. She had a picture of that being in her community. She might have some of her dogs, but then also her real estate business. She is really good at the frequency of posting. And one other thing I wanted to point out with Katie's is, you can see she's got 3 reels that did really well. She has them pinned at the top of her page, as well as, I forget what they're called. Does anybody know what these little circles are called? But having those up there that people could click on your listings, or they can click on anything about Hudson, it is, it's a great way to showcase what you've done. If you're on a team, post all your team stuff in there too. It makes you look better. If you are a solo agent and you're trying to build your book of what you've done, ask an agent in the office, hey, can I add a couple, like maybe it's my favorite listings or listings in this community, and you could ask. And then Carly, she is amazing on video as well. As you can see, she's got something pinned. So when people go to her page, that's what they're seeing first, that it's about real estate. And they all have a bio as well, like a short blip of Katie is helping realtors leverage social media, which she does. Emily, buying and selling her house with me is a slam dunkin', which is her tagline. Carly has that she's an expert real estate agent in Cleveland and Akron. So people know what they're expecting. And I know this isn't supposed to be a social media class, but I think it's so important to note, even more so than what you're actually taking to their house in the listing presentation. What does your social media profile look like? And if you haven't done any business yet, or you're in the beginning stages, you can still add, I love things like the this or that. You know, do you like this kitchen or that kitchen? Do you like the beach or the city? There are ways it could be real estate related. And last thing I will say is don't get in your head if you have 1,000 followers and 20 likes. It doesn't matter. What you want to see is views and how many people are viewing. Perception's everything. So even if you don't have 1 million likes, people are seeing what you're doing. And a nice dose of personal and business always helps. So what should you be including in the presentation? Comps, your unique value proposition, and credibility. I'll go through these in a little further detail in each one, but comps, like first off, I want to say, I think before we go into detail, is keeping it short and sweet. You know, we are, just like I shared with social media, we're also a technology age, and people don't have the attention span to sit through a full out 40-page magazine of what you're offering and what your listing presentation is. So if yours is quite lengthy, maybe you break that apart and have a preparing your home for sale that you send them prior to. Or I just would encourage you to keep it to the basics, keep it to comps, keep it to your unique value proposition, and then your credibility as an agent. If yours is lengthier, which is okay, but when you actually go, I'd keep it short and sweet. If yours is lengthier, I would encourage you guys to send this to your sellers before your listing appointment. So they have now had a time to go through it. And once you're there at the house, they can ask you questions, anything they weren't sure of. Because again, like we are the relationship building business, but you probably don't want to spend 2 hours there. I mean, it's okay if you do, but send it to them prior if it is lengthier. And I've also heard people say, send it to their place of work. I think this is huge because what happens is where I think people will start to ghost us is things are going great. And then, oh, somebody, once they find out their friends are selling or their friends find out they're selling, now they're going to refer them to somebody. So if you mail them something to their place of work or where they're going to get recommendations from other people, you know, their friends are going to think, wow, my agent didn't send me something. So keep that in mind. I don't think you have to, but it's a good way to go the extra mile. If you're one of those like VIP service agents, then I do think you should send it prior to. So to get into comps, first of all, I have mixed reviews on, in some listing presentation templates, you'll just see maybe 3 comps and it'll give you a blurb of each one. I would say this, you are going to want at least 3 sold comps, 3 active if if there are 3 active, in this market, there's not always, but 3 solds, 3 active, and 3 pending. The active is their competition. I mean, this is kind of basic. You guys know this, but the pending is how quickly has it went pending, where were they priced at, and solds are your best comparables for the price. Now, something I love to do, and I learned this when I started on Jose's team, I think most of you do this, but if you don't, be sure to print the buyer full with photos, because what we want to do when we are actually in the listing presentation is helping the seller self-discover the price. So we are educating them on the market, and they're ultimately the boss. So it is, hey, I'm going to tell you what market value of your property is and why I feel we should price at market value. However, it's, up to you. There's advantages of underpricing. Here's what may happen if we overprice. And what we can do once you get a good idea by printing the buyer full with photos, you're able to say, I know I don't have a ton of pictures on here, but you're able to leaf through it and, okay, this is a really close comparable to yours. How do you think your kitchen compares to this kitchen? What about your backyard to their backyard? How about the master suite compared to their master suite? And it kind of starts, they'll see that price. Oh, okay, this is nicer, or oh, ours is nicer. And you're really helping them self-discover, because we don't want to just give them a number. I think it's always great to give them a range and what to expect in that range. Another thing I would point out as well is, shoot, I lost what I was going to point out. But I can see here I wrote, unless you are in Cleveland City or Akron City, I typically pull school districts too, because in most communities, the buyers are looking in Solon, they're looking in Brunswick, they're looking in Medina schools. Typically, they're looking in that school system-ish. So ideally, if you can get these comps if the neighborhood provides enough, great. If not, I think using the school district, I typically like that better than zip codes. And then last thing I wanted to say on comps is I am not well versed in this at all, but when you are logging into MLS now and they have all those apps, RPR, if you have not looked into this, I would encourage you guys to look into it. So you're going to put in a subject property, put it an address, and if you know prior to the listing appointment that they've put in granite countertops, or they've remodeled their kitchen, they finished their basement, any upgrades they've done, or if something has happened on the other end that would affect the value of the home, you can put it in there. I hear appraisers use a system like this quite a bit, and it's supposed to give you a really good value. I mean, I am kind of the traditional, like I said, looking in the MLS, but I would encourage you guys to play around with RPR. And reason being, where I had first found out about this from was a friend of mine who's not at Keller Williams. So we know that competitors may be pulling it up. We want to at least be educated on it, even if we're not using it in our listing presentation. Anyone have questions on comps? You can unmute yourself. I'm not sure if I can see the chat or not, but if you do, let me know. Then we have your unique value proposition. I am going to guess that I would say of all of the people we have on this call, maybe 10% of us, Christina, I know you do because you guys recently had a similar class. Most of us don't necessarily have a unique value presentation and something we're including in our listing presentation. So step number 1 here is, if you don't have a value proposition, get one. And what I would say to that is, we all have our own superpower in this industry. We all have things that make us great. So what are you doing? Even if it's something everyone does, make a list. This here, I had pulled a couple years ago, I did the Glover Listing Mastery course. And if you ever do those, you're in a Facebook group and you never leave the Facebook group, and they're constantly adding files of listing presentations, etc. So I pulled the Glover agency presentation. I have it on this and the next slide. And what I found really interesting here is it's not fancy. They essentially have bullet pointed the 17 things that they do that's valuable as a team that they're offering to their clients. So if you guys want to even take a screenshot of this, I can send you the slides too if you want. After, just put in the chat that you would like the slides if you do. But it's really simple. And so please, like, make a mental list of, here's what is my superpower. This is what makes me special. And if you don't know where to start, ask your friends, ask your family, hey, if you were to sell your home, what's important to you right now? Because your value proposition of what it was 6 years ago may not be what it is now, because the market's changing and we need to adjust what that is. So again, we're including comps. We have our unique value proposition. And then lastly is credibility. So when I first pulled this up, I thought, oh gosh, I can't include that, because who can compete against the #1 agent in Michigan, and nearly 1,000 homes sold? Here's 2 things I like about this and why I'm including it here. So their credibility is, they're the #1 real estate team in Michigan, but then they also say what makes them special in their community, accolades they've got. If you don't have these accolades, I don't know if anybody wants to unmute or put in the chat what they think they could use in place of these accolades.
Hey, Jill, it's Ron.
Hey, Ron.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Particularly if you're a newer agent, with this and you don't have a track record, which most of us don't, like Jeff Glover, use the office statistics,
Yep.
in there, that you're part of a network that is impactful in the community. And
Exactly.
that's something that you can use until you start to build your own individual stats.
Yes, it's exactly it. That is what I was going to say. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
That's perfect. I was hoping somebody would say that. So if you don't have, exactly like Ron said, if you don't have the accolades yet, or you're hoping to grow in a community, use the market centers. That would be step 1. Another thing I think you could use in place of these are reviews. I know you're not going to have reviews day 1, but as you start getting reviews, heck, when I first started, I'm embarrassed to say this, my husband gave me a Zillow review. So have your friends and family, maybe in a past life, 7 years ago, before I was in real estate, I did hair. Have some of if you were in a service related industry, where can they leave you a review? And that's how maybe you could get the ball rolling, I would say. Or if you're on a team, you could use your team's reviews, etc. So I think, yes, #1, using your market center stats. And then #2 would be, once you start getting reviews, I think reviews are great. So something that was interesting in the packet that Glover Agency takes on an appointment, it is only 6 pages. And page 1 was really just a house, it was the cover of the book, if you will. So they didn't have much in it. I liked the way they kept it simple. But yes, so back to this. One other thing I do like is on that page where you have, whether it's reviews, whether it's your market center stats or your stats, I do like that they say meet Jeff Glover. So it could be a meet Heather, meet Tina, and a little bit about you. even if you don't have immediate real estate experience, what field were you in prior? What are you passionate about? How does that translate into real estate? So putting that on one page, I think I really liked that. I'll probably readjust our listing presentation to do something like that. I thought that was really, really positive. And then the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, and if you have any questions, we'll open it up. But I do think I have heard time and time again. We actually just had a mastermind not too long ago, and Diane Westlow was saying she was in and it was probably a luxury listing. Oh, I would say at least over 500,000. She was in a listing appointment recently, and the guy ended up calling her back, and he said, Diane, I'm using you because the other person who she was up against, who we won't name any names, very credible in the Cleveland market, came in with nothing. Really just, you could tell was unprepared. Although sometimes, I mean, you're in it enough, sure, you can have an idea, but guys, until you're in the house, you're not educated enough to like give them a range. So this seller felt that he was unprepared. He said he didn't give me anything. So I do think it's really important. I know what I've said, keep it short and sweet, but giving them something, it shows that you care about them. You are going the extra mile. You have something you want to hand over to them. And I have some people say, oh, well, I'll email it. You can email it. You can also have a hard copy. I think it's nice to have a hard copy. But be sure you have something. And whether you are a solo agent, you are on a large team, a small team, I will say this. I know for a long time, people used to say, oh, Command's wonky. Command had a rough start like 7 years ago. It does a lot now, you guys. And I love the design section of Command. So here are 5 different listing templates. They all have the same information, but they all have a little bit of a different design. What's cool about this, it might take you an hour, maybe even longer than that, to fill out your very first one. Once you've done it once, and then you can just kind of change a page or two per listing, it's really quick to get through. And there's also on Etsy, I don't know if Kate Palfy's on here, but she recently, she got a listing presentation, buyer presentation printed off Etsy. She had it, she sent it to Staples, I think, bound like in a magazine. What's nice about that, guys, is you don't have to think about it. It may take you an hour or two or more to prepare it, but then print 10 of them and you can grab and go, or you can print 100 of them if you're that busy. But having it easy, whatever you can do to make things easy on yourself when you do have the appointment, the better. So if you don't have a listing presentation, I would start with Command because it includes what you're already paying for as a Keller Williams agent. So it's at no additional cost to you. I think it's great what they have. You can print through Command or you can send it to a local Staples, Office Max, whatever you prefer. Or even get on Etsy or Agent Crate. There are so many sites now that can make things pretty for you. So if you're on this, especially if you're a solo agent, don't get in your head if you feel like you're competing against a team that has this big, beautiful listing presentation. You can have that really easily for yourself as well. And I would say from there, do we have any other questions? And I want to make sure I see in the chat here who would like the copy, because I know a couple people did.
Yeah, Jill, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Well, first of all, that was short and sweet. That was a good presentation. Thank you.
You are very welcome.
What about the net sheet and the TNL? Is this the good time to present these, or we do that after the first meeting with them?
So great question, Tina. I do take the net sheet into a listing presentation. If you guys have, I would say if you have a relationship with Living, we're American Title, at Elevate, we are Infinity Title. I know both of those title companies actually give you, I think it is the easiest way to do it. It will be down to almost to the dollar. Once you have a starting list price, you put in the property. You will need to know what their taxes are and what they've paid for the year prior. But I typically will do that on my computer right in front of them. Or at times you could send a net sheet after. Ron, Sandy, you guys are OGs here. I don't know if you would answer that question
Yeah.
differently, but I
No,
typically do it there at the appointment. Ron, what would you say?
yeah, so Jill, yeah, it really depends. We send it after. And the
Mhm.
reason why is because there's two important elements in that net sheet. One is the price. And so you're going to get a better idea once you have viewed the property and really start to have that discussion with the seller. And secondly is commission, because that commission is in there and you don't want to just assume what that rate's going to be. You want to make sure that you've had that discussion. Everything is negotiable, with that, and at least you have some idea with that. So that's why we send it afterwards.
Completely agree. And to clarify, Tina, this is such a great question. When I do it there, I'm actually doing it actively once we've already decided these things. So I'll pull up the title company and do it together with them there. If I do it there, I think it's perfectly fine to send after as well. It might even be a good touch point for communication after. If you're going to do it after though, be sure to hold yourself to your word. If you say, I'm going to get this to you by 7 tonight, get it to them by 7 that night. If you can't get it that evening, I trust I will get this to you by 10 a.m. tomorrow, and you get it to them by 10 a.m. that next day.
Yeah, and Jill, that's a great point because you could use that as a follow-up. So we always send back to them basically a little bit of the information that we pulled from our listing presentation and really just a summary as to, what we're doing. What's the sales price? What's the commission? What's the length of the listing, contract? Just a little bit of a summary to give them something that they can have and look at because you're in competition. And they're going to be comparing that. So giving them something in writing, I think, is important.
Yes, completely agree.
Thank you.
Hey, Jill, it's Christine.
Hi,
Stowell. So one thing I just wanted to say to add regarding the value proposition and talking about all of that, because I've never been on a team. I've always usually been by myself. It's really important for people to also remember, and I kind of led with this when I started, I haven't sold, $8 million in sales this year or whatever it might be, but I'm going to work really hard for you because this is my goal and I need to make sure that I'm doing a good job for my clients to get to my goal because I would like a referral from you in the future. And we always say you should be talking about your goals. Well, what better way to set the platform in front of somebody about your goal? And I am new, I am by myself, but this is what I'm trying to do. And I need you in the future. So I'm going to do a good job by you. I think could also be pretty powerful for somebody.
100%, Christine. That is such a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up. This is, you guys, when you first start, your superpower might be because you're that hungry, and I'm going to prove it to you. And that's absolutely okay to say. And I love the sharing the goals. That is, when we say this value proposition, those are the expectations. Like you are sharing, hey, you can expect this in using me as your agent. And maybe it's the hardworking, the whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be as systematized as what a large team does. Thank you so much, Christine, for bringing that up. And one other thing I would add, because Christine brought up referrals, we actually talked about this at Living's team meeting this week. Important to bring up though, you guys, I think they say, the best time to ask for a referral is during the transaction. Once your deal closes, I think it goes down between that and 2 weeks, it goes down to 75% chance. And then 30 days after, there's only a 50% chance they're going to give you a referral. And then after 30 days, it goes down to a very small amount. So don't be scared. Like that should be just conversation, and you can use it in a sense. It doesn't have to be so formal as, hey, do you know anyone else looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? It could be as you're laughing, oh my gosh, Janae, like I love you. I have loved this conversation today. I want all my clients to be like you. If you have any friends just like you who are looking, please let me know, because you make this enjoyable for me right now. So just doing it in a natural conversational piece. Don't, I would say you don't have to get in your head that it has to be this super formal. I think the more relational and authentic we are, the better. Great feedback. Any other questions before we close up shop here? Doesn't sound like it. I have Annie, Tina, and Jessica. I am going to send you the slides. Thank you all for being here, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Jill.
Thanks. Bye-bye.